Welcome to episode 4 of the unofficial FX Hash Untitled series thing. In this episode, we're going to cover some previews of upcoming projects and then all about estimating the cost of uploading ETH projects. And by estimating, I mean what it could cost, but it's also a wildly, slightly educated guess, and then a little bit more news at the end. So the main thing is estimating those costs. Nice quick episode this week. I don't think there's much housekeeping to be done. We're 9 days away from the launch of FX Hash, which means this episode and then one more before it all kicks off. And as I've said before, once all that settles in, we'll get into some deeper tutorials about certain features on FX Hash, like FX params we'll do a deep dive on, and then any new stuff they throw at us. But first, hi, I'm Dan Cat, award-winning contemporary print artist, although those awards aren't actually in contemporary print, but there's only so much you can write on that little title thing down there below. A couple of things at the top. FX Hash have announced various events around the 1st of December. The closest to me is London, but I probably won't be going to that. In fact, I definitely won't be going to that because it's far too short notice now that I'm old. I can't be doing with things like that. I need at least a couple of months. But if you're near to one of those, then they should be fun. And a few more project previews have popped up on the launch calendar. Let's look at those. First, we have Peter with the Untitled project. I think I've seen the title for this, but it's not public yet. I think it popped up for one hot second, and these are generated with a Monte Carlo path tracer. Peter says it's 10 kilobytes of code, no libraries. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say 10 kilobytes is actually quite a chunky project. His sculpture was around 6,370 bytes, and Universal Rayhatcher was 6,942. So we're just going up with 10,000 bytes. And just to be clear, it takes about 10 kilobytes of code for me to set up a canvas object and draw some circles in it. So it's definitely still amazing and kind of fun to imagine what Peter's doing with those extra 3,000 bytes of code that he's got in there. Keeping in the world of path tracing, we have Ella with another still to be titled project. It's definitely easier to sort of work out what's going on when you think of this as a top-down view on lots of objects where the light is passing through them or emitting from them. Kind of love this project. We also have Jeff Sketch, I++ Sketch, who has just a blank preview at the moment, but over on Twitter has been showing these images, which have some nice Imposter Syndrome color palettes going on. Imposter Syndrome was a release on Artblocks, but I'm guessing that this is for the FX Hash launch, although I don't think we know yet. And they were scheduled for a week on Friday, the 1st of December for that launch. And I think that will do it. On to... I wanted to talk about the cost of putting your project on chain for an ETH project. At the moment, when you upload a project onto FX Hash and then you go through all the steps right at the very end, it tells you the estimated price for uploading that project onto chain, but only for Tezos so far, because of course ETH doesn't go live until the 1st of December. So in a few days' time, this all becomes a lot easier, but people are sort of naturally wondering how much it will cost to put a project on ETH before that date to work out whether they want to do it or not. Now, FX Hash is saying they've worked very hard on making putting things on chain as efficient as possible, to the point they've been working with some gas people. That's a terrible way of saying it. Anyway, they've worked with some people on keeping that cost down. And if we look over a project I've just dropped on Alba, where I've been testing file size and the cost there, and this isn't like 100% comparable because of what FX Hash is doing, but they are a couple of data points that I think we can use. And they also sort of line up with Artblocks pretty well. And in those places, there are three kind of factors. One, putting the code on chain. Obviously, the more code you have, the more it's going to cost. So twice as much code, twice the cost. Then plus a little bit more, it tends to go up a little bit the more you put on chain. Then 2, deploying the contract at the end, which is the very last thing to happen. And that's more of a fixed cost. But 3, both of those scale with the cost of gas at the moment. Gas is the cost of doing things on the blockchain, and it varies. If the blockchain is really busy, the price of gas goes up. If not much is happening, then obviously the price comes down. And you can see that over here on Etherscan. So you can see it peaks at around 114, 110 roughly, and the low down here is around in the 20s. So you're looking for a point like this. It's definitely worth waiting until it's all chilled out rather than these hot times here. So don't say things like, oh, I'm going to launch my project at 5 p.m. on Monday and then wait just before 5 p.m. on Monday because gas prices could be super high. It's definitely worth putting things on chain a few days before when things are nice and calm. Anyway, here are 2 Alba data points. This first one is the project that I just launched on there, and it was 60 kilobytes of unminified and uncompressed code. And because I'm a very verbose coder, about 1/3 of my code is actually comments. So Alba minifies that, like stripping out all the comments and a few more tricks, and that got it down to 20 kilobytes. And then when it compressed it, it went down to a final 10 kilobytes. At 50 gas, when I put it on, that 10 kilobyte cost $274 to put on chain, and deploying the contract took $135 for a grand total of just over $400 at 50 gas. Now, if I had waited until gas came down to like 25, I would have saved myself like $200, and it would have been half the price for me to do that. So 60 kilobytes before minifying and all that jazz at 50 gas costs around $400. This second one, and to make it slightly easier, I'll put them both up so you can kind of compare them. Now, this one started as a 10 kilobyte project, which got squished down to about 2.6 kilobytes, and that cost $40 to put on chain, and the contract deployment cost $60 for a grand total of like $100 at 24 gas. Meaning, the short answer is if your project is between 10 kilobytes when it's compressed or 60 kilobytes uncompressed and unminified, and gas is between 25 and 50, then your final cost will be between like $100 and $400. That's what you're working with. And that all kind of depends on how FX Hash has implemented things. It might be slightly cheaper, who knows. A more exact guess, but this is still a guess and this is horrid, is 245 times the compressed and minified bytes times gas price divided by 1 and 9 zeros, which is 1 billion, multiplied by gas price divided by 800 equals the amount of ETH it's going to cost you. So running an estimate for my upcoming project Monster, and I'm just going to jump onto the laptop again here for a moment so we can get all the latest figures. So I'm in my folder now, and I've got index.html and index.js, and that's 51 kilobytes. If I take both of those and I compress them, I can see that this is now, bring this over here, 13,239 bytes. So if I plug that into my formula, oh, we need to do one more thing. Let's check on gas prices. If I refresh this page, we see gas is about 32 at the moment. So if we do our sums, 245 multiplied by 132,939, multiplied by the gas price, divided by 1 billion, and then I'm going to add the gas price, 36 divided by 800. That's going to cost me 0.161 ETH to put on chain and deploy. And if we look at the price of that at the moment, that's going to cost me about $325 to put that on chain right now with that size at that price. And I know that's a little bit weird, but that's how we'd work it out. Now remember, this is all very ballpark, and we won't know the exact numbers until we know how FX Hash does things, but that should give you an idea. So, how does that affect your pricing? Very quickly, assuming that our project costs $325, and if we want to break even, FX Hash takes 10%. That's at the moment. I suspect that's going to go up just a little bit. That means we need to sell roughly 325 multiplied by 1.111 to give us our 10%, around $361 worth of mints to cover our costs. And as we shouldn't really go below 0.02 ETH per mint and 0.015 at a very push, the lowest should be between those two values, because at that point you're kind of costing the collector an overhead in gas price just to buy your mint. So it's not really worth it. You might as well switch to TES at that point, but we'll cover that a little bit in the new section at the end. And also, that's just my opinion. Do what you like. At that price point, 0.02 ETH, which is 0.02 ETH, $40.29. If we take our $325 that we need to make, divide by 40, then we need to sell 8.125. We need to sell 9 mints to cover our costs of putting everything onto chain. So if you think you're going to sell enough at that price, that's how you do it. You do those calculations. So to recap, these are the steps you should take. 1, run your code through a minimizer This one here is the one that I use. You plug your code in there. So my code started off at 51.1 kilobytes. After minifying, it went down to 16.32 kilobytes. Then obviously it's going to get compressed after that. If you're doing Webpack or modern web development, this will probably be part of your bundling process or happen automatically. Although remember to watch episode 2 about keeping p5.min.js and 3.min.js out of the bundle. Then 2, zip the files up, again excluding the p5 and the 3.js files. 3, do the calculation, which we showed you to the left and we talked about earlier. I've made a little guesstimate table here on the left so that you don't actually have to do all that. And 4, remember that this could be way off. This isn't a guarantee. This is just a ballpark to give you an idea of what you're looking at when trying to price everything up. And finally, of course, it doesn't have to be on chain. If you're using lots of assets or the project is ballooned for whatever reason, then you can do it off chain or you can do it on Tez. It's all cool. It doesn't need to be on chain. And hopefully that will help you decide what to do, or at least give you an idea of the numbers you're dealing with. And remember, there's loads of factors around it. Right, with that, on to... Still definitely working on that new sting. Brief news. The FXHash Discord has changed all the channels and has switched over to like a forum threads kind of thing for some stuff. And I've decided that that's where this video is going to go. So there'll be a link down below, but I'm going to post each of these videos into my own forum thread so we can keep on top and have questions in there. I think it might be kind of fun and it keeps it all together. So if you haven't checked out the Discord, go check that out. That's good. Second bit of news is the sandbox, when you're uploading projects to try them, still doesn't work. That's tripping a few people up. Is they read the docs and they go try the sandbox and upload things, and then it's like, oh, this isn't right. Just use the actual minting and generative project and go through those steps, and then not mint at the end for testing. The sandbox, it probably ought to have a little alert on say it doesn't work. Just thought I'd cover that. And the third one, I think, is Winter, that takes the credit card payments. I was reading that they've kind of gone into maintenance mode a little bit. So while they still support Tez, they're not having it. It's not going to be ready on the ETH side for launch. So you don't have this thing where you can just pay for a credit card no matter which chain that it goes on. That's all happening in the future. So in the future, all this stuff about pricing for ETH or pricing for Tez shouldn't really matter. You should just be able to pick a dollar price. That's maybe the dream. And then you pitch to that, and then the back end handles all the transactions and stuff. Anyway, so yeah, people are asking about credit card payment for ETH right at the start. I don't think it's going to happen. You know, maybe it still does, but I doubt it. And I think that's it for news. I know this episode is a bit mathy, and also it'll go out to date in 2 weeks' time when you can just upload the project, but I keep seeing it pop up about how much is it going to cost. I thought this might help. And with that, I hope you have a great time. I hope you have good fun making projects or keeping an eye on FXHash. I will catch you next week for the last episode before version 2 launches. And then I'll think about what the future for this is. It'll be nice to get some interviews, stuff like that, some behind the scenes scoops, new features, params. It's all quite exciting. Anyway, I will see you soon. Goodbye, I guess. I was trying to think of something cool to say at the end. Maybe I should write these down first. All right, see you soon.